Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation. And viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, corporate leaders address concerns from New Mexicans ahead of a potentially historic public utility merger.
That's what we want to do, to create a hub in New Mexico that, the employment, the economic development remains there.
And blurring lines between religion and government, why a New Mexico pastor is at the center of a national discussion on the church's influence on politics. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm your host, Gene Grant. New Mexico's own U.S. Interior Secretary Deb Haaland is making a national push to remove derogatory and culturally insensitive names from federal lands. Our Line Opinion panel digs into why it's happening now. Plus, environment reporter Laura Paskus sits down with executives involved in a potential multi-billion-dollar public utility merger that could have big implications for citizens across the state. And again, making headlines in our state and across the country, COVID-19. Hospitalizations have increased dramatically in the last month. Right now, 633 patients with COVID-19 are being cared for in New Mexico hospitals. That's up 72% from November 1st, when there was just 368. It's forced some hospital systems to institute crisis standards of care, allowing more flexibility and shifting resources to help take care of those patients. Now, according to the State Health Department's most recent COVID-19 briefing earlier this week, there is some cause for cautious optimism. The spread rate has fallen below 1, meaning for a single infected person, fewer than one other individual is contracting the virus. But health leaders are urging people not to become complacent. State doctors say awareness and precautions are the main reasons the spread has slowed. And with the new Omicron variant yet to be identified in our state, the possibility for another spike remains. The virus is also forcing some changes for state government as well in the New Mexico legislature as they prepare to begin a special session. I spoke with the communications director for the Senate Democrats about what will be different, both for lawmakers and citizens. With COVID, cases are, of course, coming up around the state. The numbers are not that great, but the Capitol is staying open for the public, but there's some new procedures. Could you brush us up on what those are?
Certainly, yes. And as you said, Gene, COVID is still very much with us. So the goal for this session is to get the work done, but to do it in a way that keeps the public, members, and staff at the Roundhouse safe. So the Legislative Council Service just recently announced that in order for the public to attend in person at the Roundhouse, proof of vaccination will have to be shown upon entry. And I can go through the details of how that's going to work. But if the public wants to come into the building, they have to show proof of full vaccination.
Let me ask you a question. When you say full vaccination, does that include a booster?
I believe as long as they're saying for the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, 6 months really is the time for efficacy, and then beyond that 6 months is when the booster is recommended. So I believe as long as it's been within the previous 6 months, I'll have to verify that, but okay, that would be considered full vaccination. But they will look to see if people have boosters if they're needed by then.
Lawmakers, are they required to be vaccinated as well?
They actually can't, and that's actually a constitutional issue. Legislative Council Service cannot mandate that legislators get the vaccine. They're considered constitutional law officers, and they're outside of the purview. But obviously, it is highly encouraged that legislators too are vaccinated and boosted when they can be.
Last time around, there was a pretty good round of social distancing and masking in the legislature. Are we to expect that again as well for lawmakers?
Masking, definitely. Masking will still be required throughout the building. And as far as social distancing, I think, the barricades in the chambers are still up, the plexiglass. Fortunately, the Roundhouse is a pretty good sized building. And so I don't necessarily think that it's going to be really crowded, but we'll be keeping an eye on the size. And ask that people do continue to adhere to some social distancing.
Mm-hmm. We're talking to Chris Nordstrom. He's the communications director for the New Mexico Senate Democrats in the Roundhouse. And Chris, I do have a question. Any difference between procedures between the Senate and the House that you're aware of?
Not really. As I said, the Roundhouse is open, but one important thing to note is in some sense, this session will be the most open of any session, because not only is the Roundhouse open for people to come in, assuming they're vaccinated, but the last session, the building was closed, but the session was open via technology, and that will continue. So if someone can't or chooses not to come into the Roundhouse, they'll still be able to participate via Zoom, go to attend committee meetings, have their voices be heard. The details of how that works in each chamber might differ slightly, but for the most part, the procedures are pretty much the same, and both sides will be operating the same. Legislators will be attending in person, unless there's extenuating circumstances for health reasons. I believe all the legislators will be in person in both chambers.
Interesting points there. This is the first session we've had since the Legislative Council voted to ban firearms from the Roundhouse. Not without controversy. We covered it a lot on New Mexico in Focus, certainly. How will that change how people enter the Capitol building? Is there anything, a protocol set up for that now?
Yes, there is. So that, coupled with the vaccine check, will definitely change the way people come into the building. I believe, some of these details are still being worked out, but I think the plan is that there will be 4 entrances to the Capitol. So 4 different ways people can come in. And when you enter, there will actually be 2 separate checkpoints. One will be the vaccine check, and then the second will be the security check. So there will be metal detectors and potential bag searches before you can actually come all the way into the building.
Mm-hmm. Any backlash on this new protocol that you've been dealing with in the Senate side? What's been the reaction so far? On both issues, I think for the most part, people are extremely supportive of it. I mean, we know that, COVID is still very much in control, sadly. I think yesterday it was reported there were 633 people hospitalized right now in New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And while we have a good vaccination rate, I think we're just shy of 75% full vaccination in the state. That's 25% unvaccinated is still a lot of folks. So I think in terms of safety for everyone involved, the rule is very much appreciated, and I think well accepted. Same for the weapons ban. I think it is the world we're living in today, and I think for the safety and security of everybody in the Roundhouse, it's important that we have this in place. Mm-hmm. Republican Chairman Stephen Pierce had a quote that Santa Fe New Mexican columnist Milan Simonich quoted just a couple of days ago that basically said the progressive Democrats are once again trying to hide behind these protocols to keep the public's need to know at bay. Would you agree with that? Absolutely not.
As I mentioned before, I think in many ways, this upcoming session is more open than previous sessions in terms of access to the building, both physically and virtually. So, it's open, transparent. The public is invited to attend in whatever way they're able to, and I think it's going to make for a very transparent and open session.
Mm-hmm. It's going to take, in my mind's eye, as someone who, like a lot of us, try to get in the Roundhouse during the session to do our work and stuff, I can imagine some pretty serious lines or some pretty serious delays, possibly at the start of committee hearing times. I mean, there's a lot of things that could be compromised here. How prepared is the Senate side for that eventuality that it might be impactful on the clock, literally, of the day-to-day clock?
That's a very good question. And I think in some ways, the special will actually give us a little bit of a practice ground for the regular session come January, because the special really is focused on redistricting. There's not a whole lot of issues. That doesn't mean to say that there won't be people interested in coming into the building. We certainly expect that, but I think for the special session, there probably won't be large crowds, I would just imagine. And so I think this will give us a good opportunity and chance to see, okay, how's the flow looking? Are there the right number of people in place to take care of the lines, et cetera? And then when January rolls around and more people are presumably coming in, I think those are considerations that'll just have to be made in terms of start times and meeting times.
Now that we know a little bit more about what will be different when lawmakers return to the Roundhouse, let's get some reaction from our Line Opinion panelists. This week I'm joined virtually by Kathy McGill. She is founder and CEO of the New Mexico Black Leadership Council. Attorney and line regular Sophie Martin is with us, and former State House Minority Whip Daniel Foley joins us once again. So first off, guys, we got some clarification from Mr. Nordstrom on those boosters I asked him about. As of now, they are not a factor in declaring someone fully vaccinated, at least in this context. So Sophie, with all this in mind, are these prudent precautions, and how important is this once again to allow people into the Capitol to watch our public servants work?
There was never going to be a perfect solution here. I mean, COVID just doesn't allow for that, right? But it seems to me that leadership has come up with a compromise that will allow people to come in through Zoom, will allow people who are vaccinated to come in person. It's unfortunate that there'll be the loss of the cultural displays and things like that, but this is the reality we're dealing with right now. One of the things that I thought was really notable, and I watch for this, I know a lot of people who deal with events and the public and things like that sort of careful, well, today it's this kind of vaccine, that sort of thinking, but it could be that by the time we get to the legislative session that a third dose will be required. We're certainly hearing that on both the national and local levels. And so, I mean, I do see organizations saying, we're just going to follow what's in place then, and fully vaccinated is the term that folks are using.
Good points there. Dan, I want to get your take on this. He just mentioned, and others have, this is potentially the most transparent session we have had to date in New Mexico, given it will be open to the public in person, as we just talked about, and virtually as well. Do you agree, Dan? And if so, how valuable is that for citizens? I mean, there's a lot of tough talk out there from some Republicans still saying this is a game to keep the public from getting this kind of information.
Yeah, I mean, Gene, I appreciate you, giving up the mantra of it's the most transparent legislative session ever. I mean, I don't know how it's any more transparent than it was when everybody could come and go as they pleased. It just seems surprising. I mean, they've been doing the live streaming for a few years now, and you could come and go. Listen, this is a typical. You look at this stuff where we are with the increased numbers of COVID in New Mexico, the fact that we've been in some sort of hyper pole when it comes to isolating ourselves, locking things down, social distancing, getting the shots, and we're still having these huge numbers. It does beg the question, and I think it's a valid question. If you were to say, as we've had this conversation on this show before about the guns in the Capitol, and we've always said, hey, listen, the thought of people having guns in the Capitol really prevents other people from stating how they feel and their thoughts. And so that's a legitimate conversation. There's no doubt that this is clearly, when you start putting in policies like this, and we all know that none of the stuff we're talking about, whether it's shots, whether it's masks, prevents you from spreading COVID. It's just to keep you from dying if you get it. It does nothing to keep me from giving it to somebody else. So it's an individual choice that people make. I've chosen to make.
Nothing might be a little strong there.
Dr. Foley in the house.
I mean,
really. There's nothing. There's not anybody out there that says there's not anything that says mask, get a shot, and you will not spread the disease. There's nothing that says that. If any of you guys want to say that,
no, but there's there's research that there is a decrease in spread, that people who have been fully vaccinated, it's a lot less likely that they'll spread.
That's
And
right.
No
so
doubt that
that's what they're working on.
There's been no doubt that there's been some conversations on both sides when it comes to that, but there's nobody out there saying that you should do this. So everything we're talking about is about me taking precautions for myself. But now we're going to impose these precautions on folks before they can attend these hearings. Just coincidentally coincides with redistricting. And, you know, it's clearly a shot. I think the Republican leadership is right. It's clearly a shot at limiting, you know, the people who we know are part of the
What's being
folks
limited, Dan? I'm curious in your mind.
if you're not vaccinated, you can't come. And there's
You can still
definitely
watch. You can still
definitely a
watch.
stigma. There's definitely,
Yeah.
oh, of course.
Hey, I'm sorry. I just have to say, look,
Just sit
you
over
know-
there, Gene, and watch in the back corner, because we know how every time they do the Zoom meetings, they work so well. They don't kick people off. People have been unable to log on. There's nothing like showing up in person. And so again, I just say,
Dan,
look, I don't
All right, hang on.
go.
Let me get Kathy in here.
hold
Go
on a
ahead,
second.
Kathy.
I just have to say,
I'm going to finish my
that-
thought for a minute
But
before
no, but hold on one
go up
second, Dan.
there.
I
don't
think that
go
what
up-
you're
I don't
saying
go to
is
the
not.
meetings, but
Daniel,
what I
can you
do
hold
know
up? Daniel,
is that
hang on a
there's
sec, Dan.
Everything that's here,
And
the stuff
Dan-
that they're doing here is 100% to affect a certain segment of the voting population. And I just think that that's their goal.
So I think that there's this core thesis that, you know, this is about politics, but I think that it's about public safety and public health. And that's clear. None of us on this call are doctors. And we can't make those equivocal statements that has just been made. Like we had, you know, someone saying it's not a COVID driven policy. It was, if it was, the clear evidence of vaccinated individuals' ability to spread the virus would negate the reasoning for the rule. That is like, you know, there's so many things wrong with that statement. It's not about politics. It's about public safety and public health. And I think that as long as we continue to try to promote that narrative, it's just about that core thesis that you have, that Democrats are out to, you know, keep people from coming, when what we know is, and I can prove it by me, it's like, it's hard for me to get up to the session. But this past year, in the past session, even though it's been available for a long time, it wasn't really publicized. I was able to monitor a lot of things that I couldn't have monitored before. It has increased access to the information to the citizenry. And that is the truth. We can prove it by the numbers. And so saying these other things just is flat out not true.
Yeah, it's 100% false. What you just said, it's there, but you didn't know about it. Means it's there. It's been there, and
It wasn't
the fact that you tell
publicized.
people that they can't.
All right, guys, I
come
got
to
a couple more.
Capitol,
I got a couple more
so
questions
more
here.
folks are going to be watching it online.
Daniel,
I mean, this
Daniel,
is purely
Daniel,
a partisan conversation.
Daniel, come on now. Let's. We got a lot of stuff to cover here. Sophie, let's go to firearms in the Roundhouse.
Sure.
The first session where guns are banned from inside the Roundhouse. This will mean checks for everyone entering the building, of course. Your sense of that in how that's going to work on the ground, as they say.
You know, actually, Dan touched on this a moment ago, and I thought he brought up what was an important element, which is that firearms can have a chilling effect on free speech and public speech, and they are also, you know, it can be a threat to the people who are there in the Roundhouse. So, I mean, this seems entirely logical to me. New Mexico is not the first to have done something like this and to have put this in place, and. I just would really question the person who thinks, oh, I absolutely must be able to be armed in the Roundhouse when there is security on the outside, you know, to prevent all firearms from coming in. You know, I would question the motivations of that person. So I think that this is a rational step, and I think it does serve to you know, to alleviate that potential chilling effect.
Kathy, your thoughts on this too? You know, I've said it on this show a lot. People have a right to their fear. They have a right. They have a right to it. And people who want to intimidate people for no good reason outside of politics, you know, you got to do something. Your sense of it?
I think it's a rational step, and you know. As for me personally, I support it fully, and I don't think that there's a reason why people need to have their guns with them in a hearing.
Daniel, your thoughts on guns in the Roundhouse? What does it do to ban them, in your view?
I mean, it's just another grab. I mean, there's we've had no problems with guns. The 10 years that I was there, there's been no hostage taking, shooting, lockdowns. There's police everywhere, and it's just we keep what we've done, and we continue to do. We've done it since we became a country. We constantly give up rights and civil liberties all under the auspices of safety. And at the end of the day, we never get those rights and civil liberties back, right? We always are like, oh, we're never that much safer. And it always seems to be, a good way to appease individuals.
Hey, Soph, as we wait to see what's going to be on the agenda for lawmakers, we know redistricting, Dan brought up earlier, is front and center. We've talked about the different maps here on New Mexico in Focus, but will lawmakers seriously consider the guidance from the independent committee, or should we expect politics to take over, as I asked Mr. Nordstrom?
Well, the latter, right? The latter. But I do hope, and that and I hold out some optimism, some amount of optimism, that the legislature will look really carefully at the work that this group has done. Certainly, it's been impressive to see their outreach throughout the state. No process like this is ever perfect, but as I think I've said here before, I have a lot of confidence in the folks who have been leading this program. Former Supreme Court Justice Chavez, et cetera. I think it will be. I think it'll be a vigorous debate, and there are certainly a lot of entrenched interests. Nobody wants to lose their seat, and so now it comes back to the people whom this will affect, their power, their livelihoods, et cetera. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, no question there. Kathy, same question there. It's interesting when you think about how we approach these things. Why is it so different this time around? Have we not done a good job of making sure the public's going to be covered here?
I think that what we see from my vantage, the New Mexico Black Voters Collaborative and New Mexico Black Central Organizing Committee, for the first time, really in the state's history, had some testimony in the redistricting process. And if we keep peeling back the layers, what this is really about is having accurate counts in the census, and how we don't really have that. And it equates to the lack of representation. So we have to keep going back. This is why I keep, wanting people to get educated about what happened in 2020 with the census is going to affect us for the next 10 years. And we actually this time have had an opportunity to weigh in on the process and talk about, communities of concern and where we are located, and trying to get, accurate representation and an accurate count. So I think that the reason why it's different is because it needs to be different, and people are trying to expand the public's ability to have some input in this process.
Dan, real quick, we're under a minute, actually under 30 seconds. I got to get your take on this for sure. Is it just going to be politicized in whatever happened in the redistricting?
The most political thing you do in politics. I mean, Sophie's right. Are they going to look at it? Oh, they're going to look at it, but they're all working on the deal that's going to be best to serve them. To say we're going to take partisan politics out of redistricting, regardless of what party you're in, it is the most partisan political thing. And I just think people in New Mexico and across the country need to realize elections have consequences. And now's not the time to say, oh, the Democrats are going to get more seats. They are. They won. They've got the votes. If you don't want that to happen, you should have voted over the last few years. So it's the most partisan political deal, regardless of party. I'm not blaming New Mexico Democrats. It's as partisan and political in Texas as it is here. And it's just interesting when you hear people on the outside, not Sophie, she knows, Kathy, you guys know. But when you hear stuff about like, oh, we want this to be a nonpartisan deal, these guys are in the back saving each other's hide, figuring out who they want to serve up, what districts they want to draw, what best represents the party elitist and the party faithful of both sides. And that's the plan they're going to come up with.
Gotcha. We'll, of course, be tracking all the developments from the Roundhouse when the special session starts. You can watch my full discussion with the Senate Majority, my fault there, with the Senate Majority's Chris Nordstrom on Facebook and YouTube for a bit more insight on that redistricting process.
They've been doing this for 20 years. They were well in front of the curve in Europe, and they've invested and they continue to invest in new technology. So that will be one of the huge benefits we get, is we can leverage some of that technology that they're well down the path on.
Words matter, as we were all reminded this week by New Mexico's own and U.S. Interior Secretary Deb Haaland. She announced plans to remove the derogatory word squaw from all public lands, which could affect more than 650 locations, guys. That includes lakes, creeks, valleys, a lot more. Ms. Haaland also says she is committed to identifying other culturally insensitive names, much as the Interior Department did back in the 60s and 70s with words that were derogatory to African and Japanese American communities back then. And Kathy, Ms. Haaland is certainly bringing her Native American voice to the national stage, isn't she?
Absolutely, as well she should be. This was rolled out during Native American History Month, and I think quite appropriately so. Although there, lots of schools have thought about whether or not the word is derogatory. What I want to say is that I don't get to decide that. The people who are, Native American get to decide it. Deb Haaland is the Secretary of the Interior, and for the very first time, there's someone who is Native American who is in charge of it. So it makes perfect sense that she would say, on my watch, this is going to get changed. So I say, go do it.
Sophie, we learned that the city of Las Cruces considering changing names of Squaw Mountain Drive. Is there any reason not to make these name changes wherever we can?
Well, I suppose someone may argue that they have letterhead with the name of the street on it. I have boxes here. What am I going to do? But
I remember that. I remember that when we flipped to MLK Avenue years ago.
Not a good reason. That's not a good reason.
It was about letterhead.
And Jean, I myself look forward to the day that the panelists on this show don't want to say the word. Just as we would not say other words. I think this has been a real eye-opener for a lot of people, that this movement. And I'll also point out that this didn't come out of nowhere, that when she was a representative, Deb Haaland put forward legislation to accomplish something similar with a broader number of locations through the federal government. And that legislation has been reintroduced. And so, I think that there's a really lovely concerted push on this issue. And she's the right person in the right place at the right time.
Dan, when you think about it, there's also a bit of momentum on this. There's been states from Maine to Oregon who have removed the word squaw over the past few years. And I'll remind folks, Lake Tahoe, they dropped Squaw Valley. I mean, everybody knew where Squaw Valley was. You don't even think about the word. It's so familiar, and so again, the public seems to want this as well. Is there anything wrong here with removing these names as far as?
There's nothing wrong with removing them, but I think we're having I think you're kind of having two different conversations, right? When you say the public wants to have these things removed, I think the word squaw, and it's interesting, I have a friend of mine, Native American, was a tribal leader. This came up just the other day, and he was like, I'm confused because in our language, squaw means wife or woman. He says you can use it in a negative context. There's no doubt about that. But his comments to me, which is exactly the way I felt, was, there's a lot of problems out there right now. And, going after things like that today, there just seems to be a lot more lower hanging fruit.
But isn't that, can't you say that about anything, Dan?
No,
there's better things to do syndrome. She is the Department of Interior Secretary. This is right under her purview. It's not like she's reaching across the hall to do something.
You think so? With all the stuff going on with our energy crisis and drilling and getting access to public lands, all stuff that falls under her purview, this is something that we're going to celebrate, right? We're paying the highest gas prices we've been paying in the last.
Doesn't matter, Dan.
To what extent, though, do the community leaders who will serve and the individuals who are running nonprofits, who are involved in advocacy, to what extent is that community, that group of people, going to solve an energy crisis? This is a different group of people focused on a different issue. It's not, we're going to take our oil and gas experts and put them on this issue. They keep doing their oil and gas stuff.
Nobody's claiming that.
It's also not an either or, it's a both and. It's time to do it. It's time to do it.
Gene said she's the secretary of the department, and that's what my response to Gene was. He was like, "Oh, you're saying I think there's lots of words out there that have been used that have a totally negative connotation, and changes need to happen. Look, it doesn't matter to me whether they change the word or not. change all the words they want to change. I just think this is another example of virtue signaling. We're going to address something. We're going to try to get our kudos out there. And at the end of the day, it's going to make little to no difference. And it's instead of taking on the real issues. Look, I'd like to ask, I would ask the secretary, well, we're celebrating during Native American Month, taking the word squaw for the negative connotation. But all the time she was in Congress and now as the secretary, we've got a problem with missing indigenous women.
Which she's also a major advocate.
That's the first thing she went after,
She's the first person in that position
it was the first
who made movement on it.
You gotta wake up and pay attention. Saying you're for something doesn't mean you're actually making a difference in it. And so,
all right, we need to move on. Hang on a quick sec. Sophie, should this approach be an example to other difficult conversations and discussions like the statue and monolith controversies we've seen here in Albuquerque and Santa Fe? Does this conversation inform those conversations or vice versa? How should we approach this?
I think it can. I mean, I think it can, and especially as we look at other, certainly in terms of language, but it certainly could in terms of other matters. What I think is really interesting about this particular situation, to use the example from Lake Tahoe for the ski basin, which, by the way, I did not actually know that's where it was, community activists for years in the Lake Tahoe region have tried to get that name changed.
That's right.
And they've received nothing, stonewall from the community, from government. And now that they have a real opportunity to make an impact, and a partnership is being formed, partnerships, I should say, are being formed so that these decisions can move forward more quickly, more efficiently.
Yeah. Kathy,
and with real feedback,
again,
real input.
It's interesting. I hear Dan's point and others making the origin of the Algonquin word squaw, what meant woman or wife, but no one wants to seem to acknowledge that you can take a word and change it into something else quite easily, and use it as a hammer. I'm
going to use the word spade. Right? It became associated with Black people. And so when you say, I'm going to call a spade, and I'm sitting in the room, I'm going to say, you know what, you need to get some education. So the actual word didn't start out meaning that, but the now connotation of it, when you say it, means something else.
That's right.
That's exactly what's happened here. It's not an either or, it's a both and. There's nothing wrong with doing it. And if not now, when? And if not Deb Haaland, who?
Well, that's a good point. Is she doing her job? That's always the question. And Dan, let me bounce back to you. I hear your points about there's other things to do at Interior, but let's stick to the knitting here. Is it not moving the public consciousness forward by removing these names? Just as simple as that.
I don't know what you're trying to get me to answer. The word has I'm not the guy to ask. It has no negative connotation to me. If it affects people and they want it removed, I got no problem with it. I'm not protesting that she shouldn't be changing the name. It doesn't affect me. So I can't give you an opinion that says you should or shouldn't change that word. You specifically asked me, as my comment was, I just think there's bigger things that I think many people think that we should be focusing on. And that blew up into the whole, that I'm missing the point here. I don't think I'm missing the point. I think to Sophie's comments earlier that it's definitely
Daniel. She has a staff of over a couple of hundred.
Hey, listen,
they can handle more than one issue at a time at the Department of Interior.
We are talking about this issue, Gene. You can change the topic. You're the one, this group, this TV show brought this topic up. You asked me what I thought about it. Do I think she's got the entire Department of Interior working on this? No, Gene, I don't. I don't think that. Listen, if you want to run her campaign and defend her, you do it. I just think she's not doing the right job that she needs to be doing. Do I have a problem with the word squaw? It doesn't affect me. I get it. It's not something that I should.
It doesn't affect you.
That's what I said.
It's not about you.
I didn't say it was about me. But right now, I'm the one on the show talking, so it is about me. It's my opinion that they're asking about. I know you don't like my opinion, but it is my opinion.
All right, Dan, I got to wrap here.
That's the opinion I'm giving on the show.
Appreciate it. You can learn more about this issue and the importance of place names on our website. In an Our-Land episode Laura Paskus did with then Representative Haaland early this year. All right, moving on now. A merger between New Mexico's own PNM Resources and Spanish-owned Avangrid is in the works. It's a multi-billion-dollar deal that will affect nearly every household in the state. In part one of an interview with top executives at both companies, environment reporter Laura Paskus asks what's in it for New Mexicans.
Thank you so much for joining me on New Mexico in Focus today. to talk about the proposed merger between your two companies. This is a super complicated issue, and I'm really looking forward to having kind of a plain language talk about these really complicated issues. Pat and Don, I'd love to start with you. Why does PNM need this merger? Why is this so important for PNM?
Well, Laura, and thank you for your time today, and we will endeavor to get rid of our normal acronyms, which we all use. PNM started looking around and surveying the energy landscape, and as you know from your work, it's incredibly complicated. The issue of climate change is paramount, and the faster we can transition our portfolio, the better. Technology is becoming more and more interesting and more sophisticated, and you really need to be a large company with a lot of money on your balance sheet in order to help keep costs low for customers. And while PNM is a large company in terms of New Mexico, we are a very small utility in the United States. So we started looking around for someone that had all the things that we wanted in a merger partner, someone that had the same values that we did in terms of respect for our environment, for our communities, our employees, and our culture here in New Mexico and communities, someone that had a big balance sheet, and someone that had technological expertise. And we looked around and surveyed all of the utilities in the United States and ended up working with Avangrid because we thought they were the perfect fit for all those things I listed. And Avangrid happens to be majority owned, 80% owned by a company in Spain called Iberdrola, which is a world leader in renewables and technology and has a very strong balance sheet and a credit rating. So it was sort of a marriage made in heaven. Took a little romance, but we thought that it made sense because they want what's best for New Mexicans just as we want what's best for New Mexicans.
So Pedro, thanks for joining us. What is kind of your elevator pitch for the current PNM customer? How will this merger benefit PNM customers?
If you want to make sure that the people have the best quality of service, it's not only us. I think a lot of people can do that. But if you want to make sure it's the best quality of service at the cheapest price, unless you have critical mass, it's impossible. Okay, we have 32 million customers. Imagine our purchasing power to buy things. PNM has a million, less than a million. So from that point of view, it's impossible you can buy things that will allow to give that service at the same prices. SAP, substations, wires, everything. So we all need to become together. And that's why the angle, I think, for a customer in New Mexico, for me, is very simple. We're going to make sure that PNM and the customers benefit from our size. Second, the balance sheet. I think Pat mentioned that. As an example, PNM has right now in the holding company $1 billion of debt. We are happy to take that billion to our holding company in the US, okay? We already have in the US operations more or less 4 times the size of PNM. So we are already a very big company in the US. We own 8 utilities. I said the same thing every time when I bought a utility, when we merged with new companies. We want to be local, but our balance sheet, every single time, we acquired a utility, the rating went up by 1 notch. If your rating goes up, basically the cost goes down. So the ratepayers benefit. This $1 billion of debt that you have in the holding company PNM right now will move to Avangrid holding company. Imagine what it is for New Mexico to have $1 billion less of debt. Otherwise, that will have to be taken care of by New Mexico over many years, as you can imagine. And third, I think the customers, we believe, the green world has no comeback. I think, we started fighting in that world 20 years ago when nobody was fighting. So I think, we were very alone 20 years ago fighting against a lot of people, against a lot of companies, a lot of governments. Everybody now is very green. So it's very easy to be green right now. But I can tell you, COP26 last week and 2 weeks ago, we were the guys there fighting, to make sure there was an agreement. I think, Biden, signed President Biden, a bill 2 days ago. Iberdrola Avangrid was there. We were, probably the only energy company invited. Why? Because they know we are the guys fighting to make sure the world moves in a totally different direction. So we prove it. We want to do it, but we prove it. We have it done. So I think there are many reasons why we believe, we are the right partner for PNM, and we also run the companies locally. I know many US companies, when they go abroad, they send 100 American people to run it. The Chinese, they send 1,000. The Germans. In our case, it's very simple. Check our management in the US right now. It's all Americans. There may be one guy who is not American, one lady, perhaps I'm missing one or two, but the rest are Americans. And if they're not Americans, are the best we can find, okay? How we're gonna be running, PNM, you have Don there right now. We expect, Don, to be the person taking the decisions. You can call our CEOs, the presidents of the other utilities, and ask them how they run the utilities. They are the people in charge.
If the merger were to go through, what are some of the short-term and then the longer-term plans for renewable energy in New Mexico? Some of the changes we might see.
Yeah, we're already on the path, and we've proposed to be, carbon-free by 2040. We'll look at it as part of the merger to be there by 2035. And so, as Pat said, we need battery technology, and we need other technology to come along to kind of fill the gap. And that'll be important, but we're all confident with the dollars and the money that's going in that will happen. And so, in the near term, it's continuing to look for those renewable resources, whether they're battery, wind, or solar. At the same time, it's balancing our reliability. We absolutely have to be reliable, and so we'll continue to balance that. But as we look in the future, you'll see an energy sector, and it's not just in New Mexico; it'll be in the West. But I'm convinced there'll be new technology along there as well, too. So the battery, the wind, the solar, pump storage is another element, but there's a whole different other set of factors that are out there that will continue to, as innovation continues to kick in. I know that Iberdrola is heavily invested in, they've been doing this for 20 years. They were well in front of the curve in Europe, and they've invested and they continue to invest in new technology. So that will be one of the huge benefits we get, is we can leverage some of that technology that they're well down the path on.
Pedro, could you talk about some of the specifics we might see on the ground? And also if that electricity generated by renewable sources is for New Mexicans, if it's for export, kind of what we're looking at.
I think when you think about New Mexico, what can you see? Immediately, we have the resources to talk to the governor, to talk, to the other parties, to talk to the public commission, do it, outside of regulation, inside of regulation. There are many options. Texas needs energy. California needs energy. Mexico needs energy. So it's a question of what do you want to do? We are, transmission builders. There is need for transmission everywhere because the electricity, the sources are there, but there is not connected when the consumption is. So the question is what New Mexico wants to benefit from. If you want to benefit from some things, don't let just people to build the assets, own them, and be somewhere else. Make sure they become locals. That's what we want to do, to create a hub in New Mexico that, the employment, the economic development remains there. We have done that in the past. Everywhere we were going to do offshore. You see the offshore wind development right now in the US. Well, I think we're going to be one of the 3-4 players in the US doing offshore wind. Well, we're going to need a lot of, backup work, engineering work, centers, et cetera, et cetera. We have, control centers in Glasgow. We have control centers in Toledo, Spain. Okay, you don't need to have that where the offshore wind assets are. Of course, we're going to have things in Massachusetts. Of course, we will have things, in the Carolinas, but we will have other things in other places. So I think we will bring the opportunity for New Mexico to start doing things that otherwise you will miss, that wave. I think we're the type of people can help New Mexico to be part of those, cakes ahead of us.
So we talked to a reporter recently at the Bangor Daily News in Maine. Avangrid's been there for about a decade now. And one of the issues that she pointed out was problems with billing, especially after a batch of serious storms. And in a recent story, the Spanish press covered that customers saw their bills increase by 35% in July. I think these are the kinds of things that make New Mexicans a little bit nervous. Can you assure customers in New Mexico that these same kinds of problems with customer service or rate increases won't happen here?
Okay, I think let me just go one by one, because I think it's important to make sure that we explain what it is, because the way you put it there is not really what's happening. The first thing is we changed the billing system in Maine. If you ask any utility operator, when you change a billing system, you have a real mess. Okay, but we have to do it, and it was the time to do it. It's now 19 months non-stop with no issue, zero. So if you want to speak about 2 years ago and 3 years ago, when we changed the billing system, I agree, but we have to do it. And we're very proud how the work was done by the local people. And we put additional efforts, 19 months with no issue. So we're very comfortable about what it is and not is. Second, you're referring to a rate increase. We are right now, going to the Public Commission in Maine because the rate increase coming ahead now is because of the generation piece of the bill. It's not because of the networks, okay? Because of gas prices, because of other reasons, the generation piece, what we call the supply piece, has gone up materially. It's not because of the networks. And also you have transmission projects in New England that are allocated, to Maine because they benefits, later from that. Again, that's not because of, central Maine power. So that's another example why, it's not what we are doing. It's things that you have to put in the bill for other people. Third, we had, very strong opposition, from, some legislatures in Maine, to a transmission line from Canada into Massachusetts. That is funded by the fossil and nuclear operators in the region. They don't want any new generation there. Why? If you bring hydro, it's very cheap. If you don't bring any electricity into New England, the prices remain very high. You make a lot of money. So that's why the opposition we have had to the line is funded by fossil generators that they want to make sure nothing is built. Nothing. No new generation, no transmission lines to bring power, etc., etc. In Maine, we are the best operator in reliability and service by far. If you compare us with Maine, Emera Maine, who, by the way, was approved by the Public Commission, to buy, as you know, a utility in New Mexico, we are much better operator than they are from reliability and everything. And the Public Commission approved them. That's why we're very comfortable. If you look at the penalties, not in Maine, but in New England, I think we have probably the lowest, and penalties is because of the regulatory system. The penalties can be negative or actually rate increases. Okay, so you have both, and we have both situations. We are the best and the lowest penalty in New York, in Connecticut, and in Maine, as I told you, we are the best, operator. And finally, in terms of storms, I mean, we got, last year, the prize, for the best storm reaction operator in the Northeast. Please keep in mind, in Maine, in New England, in New York and Connecticut, you used to have one hurricane every 5 years. We're having 2 or 3 major storms now a year. The infrastructure is probably 50, 60 years, 70 years old. I think we're very proud to be received those awards. I think we have been congratulated by the governors, in those states. We have been put as an example in Connecticut and in Maine. And I think in the case, in Connecticut, New York, and in the case of Maine, as I said to you, we're already 19 months with no issue because of the change in the billing system.
Right. Well, thank you, all three of you, so much for talking with me today. I appreciate the chance to walk through some of these really complicated issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura.
The intersection between faith and politics is becoming more of a flashpoint in recent months after a discussion in the Catholic Church centered around President Biden and state lawmakers like Joe Cervantes taking the sacrament at Mass while publicly supporting a woman's right to choose. We'll touch on another example gaining attention here in New Mexico in a moment, but let's turn our panel first to what responsibility should religious institutions take when it comes to addressing individual political figures, either positively or negatively. Sophie?
Well, so the context for this is that Pastor Smotherman at a local Albuquerque megachurch made statements from the pulpit, or reported to have made statements from the pulpit in support of a city council candidate who happened to be at the church that day and apparently tabled in the hallway outside of the service. And that this pastor apparently was pretty overt in saying, you should be voting for this particular candidate. There's sort of a formula that churches have followed in probably about the last 20 years of how they're sort of pressing up against the limits of the Johnson Amendment. The Johnson Amendment being, I think it's 1954, and an amendment to tax code that basically said if you're going to be a tax exempt church or nonprofit, then you can't engage in political speech. And there's been a fair amount of pushback, as I said, over about the last 20 years. That the formula that seems to be working for churches, and it's interesting to see how close Smotherman got to this is, our church supports a particular law or a particular idea. This politician also supports it, while this other politician does not.
Right.
Be sure to vote your values. And that churches have kind of gotten away with that. It's unclear to me whether that's because the IRS does not really have the resources or the temperament even to enforce the Johnson Amendment. But it seems to me that especially with what we saw this week, actually, in the Supreme Court and the arguments regarding abortion rights, that there may be an increase coming of churches pushing up against the Johnson Amendment to see if they can actually get their way on that, get that overturned. So it's an interesting time. It's not just because of the Biden Catholic Church thing, but it's also this Supreme Court seems primed and has already shown that it's willing to provide additional rights, maybe not the right way to put it, but to be more deferential towards religion, and in particular Christianity, than courts in the past.
Gotcha. Hey, Kathy, let me read you what Pastor Smotherman was recorded saying in support of Lori Robertson. She's the Republican running against Tamala Feeblecorn to replace Diane Gibson. Interesting, quote, "We need people like her," Robertson, who's sitting in the audience, as Sophie mentioned, "on the city council to make sure this crazy guy they call mayor doesn't continue to push his agenda." Wow. I mean, if that isn't politicking, I don't know what is. Your sense of that in sitting as a churchgoer, would you appreciate something like that if you were sitting in the congregation?
I would say that my father was a pastor, and kind of what he said was the gospel to many people that were sitting in the pews. And that's the same thing that's true here. And, just sort of reminds me of, all the other things that we're talking about here about how people are abusing their authority. And I think that this is a clear case of that, and that he knows it and is pretty defiant about the fact that I can do it if I want. That remains to be seen.
Good point there. Dan, if there isn't any legal action following up on this, will this situation have a realistic impact on the outcome of the District 7 runoff?
So I got to tell you that I go to church there, and I was there the day this happened.
Okay.
I've known Smotherman for almost 30 years now, and I would tell you that his comments in church are going to have far less impact on the outcome of the race than the media coverage is going to have on his comments for the outcome of the race. I think that that's gotten 10-fold the number of people are talking about this and listening about this, and so. I think that just like is a belief of mine with capitalism and other things we've talked about, if people don't like what Steve Smotherman says in church, then don't go to church. Don't go to that church. And judging by the number of people that are attending his church, he's got pretty good supporters. So, it's not like we're lacking churches to visit in New Mexico, especially Albuquerque, New Mexico. So, I think at the end of the day, him saying that he's voting for somebody, him saying that the mayor's crazy, him saying that, we need more people like this person on the city council. I think the reason you don't see a lot of work, in my non-legal opinion, with the Johnson Amendment is it's a very, very tough slope for those guys to go into any court and try to decide the intent of what somebody said, what the outcome was of what they said. And I just think it's a difficult step for them. I think the day that, a pastor gets up there and says, that person, don't vote for them, vote for this person. If you only vote for this person, this is the things that are going to happen. I think that those are the people that are getting in trouble. Everybody else that's dancing around the whole, I'm for this person, that person's not doing what we want, all the scenarios we said. I just think the IRS it doesn't seem to be a fight that they've ever wanted to take up, and I'm not sure that they ever will.
Really? All right, let me read you. I see you both, Kathy. Let me just real quick. The regulations are pretty clear on this, Dan. You got to have a separate. You can't be doing these kind of things, because these entities under the law are, quote, are absolutely prohibited from directly or indirectly participating in or intervening in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for elective public office. That seems pretty clear, Sophie.
I think so too. I will say that it goes beyond that. The impact of the Johnson Amendment goes beyond someone speaking from the front of a church,
Right.
and it goes into issues of funding, and in particular, dark funding for political activity. Churches under the Johnson Amendment are not able to spend money on political campaigns or political issues,
Mm-hmm.
and you see this maybe most clearly actually amongst nonprofits, where say
They can issues,
the
right? So-
NAACP, for instance, they've got their charitable arm, and you can give money to their charitable activities, but there's a separate legal defense fund that is not tax exempt. Because churches are not required to divulge who gives them money, if they are, unencumbered by the Johnson Amendment, such that they can spend money, which is considered speech in our political system, that then becomes an avenue for dark money that can't be tracked.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the real concerns about chipping away at the Johnson Amendment. We focus on the speech of individual pastors or individual religious leaders, whether or not they're speaking on behalf of their church, whether they've crossed the line. But this is the dark underbelly.
Mm-hmm. Kathy, I got to wonder if if the loser here has a legal case. Dan mentioned before, it may not be as impactful as people were trying to make this out to be. But if she loses, might she not have an avenue to come back and say, you know what, the nonprofit status at this church right here really should be under question?
I think if she has time to pick it up, maybe she would.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would say, too, is that there are not a whole lot of people who are even aware of the fact that we have these runoff elections coming. We haven't had enough people voting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's okay for us to be talking about it. Definitely, it's okay for us to be talking about this issue more broadly, as Sophie mentioned. And I just keep going back to, people go and read. There's a book called One Nation Under God, How Corporate America Invented Christian America. And it talks about Christian libertarianism and how capitalism and Christianity have become inextricably bound, and how pastors started sort of doing these kind of things from the pulpit. So I think that, we need to understand the context of how these things are happening, why they're happening,
Mm-hmm.
and what the harm is. So, and just like Dan said, that if we don't like what Smotherman says, we don't have to go to church there. If you don't want to have an abortion, then you don't have to have one, but we don't necessarily need laws saying that you can't have one.
Thank you all for this discussion. It's been really interesting this week. Be sure to let us know what you think about any of the topics the line covered this week on our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram pages. You can also watch our past Facebook Live interviews, including my chat about the upcoming special at the Roundhouse in Santa Fe. As you heard in the discussion earlier, the new COVID variant discovered first in South Africa is now stateside, which was inevitable given how we travel. It's also inevitable that Omicron variant will arrive in New Mexico soon enough. All right, the bigger issue for me is how we deal with that arrival. Will this spur more mask use and booster shots? Or are we in for another round of denials, conspiracy theories, and a widening of the cultural divide as a result? Recall a year ago, the specter of new variants down the road having a better shot at taking root without more mask use was a hard sell for some. But here we are down that road, with another round of border and travel restrictions and a lot more possible in the future. Perhaps it's not as hard a sell now. We can only hope. Thanks again for joining us and for staying informed and engaged. We'll see you again next week in Focus.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by the McCune Charitable Foundation and viewers like you.